Mandarin is the second most spoken language in the world, and it's the first most spoken first language in the world. But nobody seems to be able to agree. Is Mandarin really, really hard or super easy?
That was easy.
Take a quick scroll through the internet and you'll see people claiming that Chinese is super easy. But it's not. I recently made a video about why the US State Department calls Japanese the hardest language in the world, and the comments section was full of people telling me that they think Chinese is actually the hardest language in the world. Now, I'm not about to sit here and tell you which language you'll find harder, but for native English speakers, Mandarin is generally put in the top 5 hardest languages in the world to learn. So what are we supposed to make of that? Why do people even think it's one of the hardest languages in the world? Well, there's a couple of reasons. First, there's the need to learn thousands and thousands of characters. When I was in college and choosing a language to learn, I chose Korean instead of Mandarin because I just didn't want to spend my time memorizing all those characters instead of the fun grammar. You need to learn around an estimated 2,500 characters to read a standard newspaper in Chinese, and to be really fluent, you'll probably need to learn closer to 8,000 characters. For a language learner, this is a heck of a lot to take on, and frankly, more than many people want to. Kids in China have to memorize all these characters too, but they definitely don't do it automatically or without effort. According to a post on Baidu, the 2012 National Curriculum Standard on the mainland provides this guidance. By grades 5 to 6, kids are expected to be able to read 3,000 characters and write 2,500. So it takes 6 years for fully immersed kids to learn all of those characters. For someone learning Mandarin, perhaps not even while living in a Chinese-speaking community, you should probably expect it to take you a really long time too. Another huge reason that Mandarin is so difficult for speakers to learn is that it's a tonal language. So tone is the use of a pitch in language to distinguish lexical or grammatical meaning. That is, it distinguishes or inflects one word from another. There are 4 tones in Mandarin, and here's an example of someone saying some of them.
我,我.
For English speakers or speakers of many other European languages, tones can be unwieldy and really, really hard to learn. We don't grow up distinguishing sounds like that, so we have to train our ears all over to manage it. There are lots of other examples of tonal languages, though. Actually, 60 to 70% of the world's languages are tonal. Many languages use even more tones than Mandarin does. For example, the Hmong language, spoken in Vietnam, Laos, Thailand, and some of southern China, can actually have 7 or even 8 tones. Another huge reason that Mandarin becomes so difficult for native English speakers is that Mandarin has very few cognates with English. So when you start learning it from scratch, if you only speak English, you'll probably know very few words in Mandarin. Of course, there are some loan words that you'll probably know. Chocolate, sofa, and guitar were all borrowed from English into Mandarin. But in reality, words like that aren't going to get you very far in everyday conversation or usage. Compare that to something like French, which shares about 60% of its vocabulary with English. There is absolutely no question that Mandarin is going to be a lot harder than that to learn. Now, what about grammar? Take a quick scroll through the internet and you'll find hundreds of people claiming that Chinese grammar is actually super simple. And to a certain extent, they're right. It doesn't have the crazy conjugations of the Romance languages, or the incessant declensions of the Slavic languages, or even plurals like adding an S to the end of a word in English. Additionally, both Mandarin and English usually use subject, verb, object word order, so you would say something like, I eat food in both languages, instead of in Korean where you might say, I food eat. But it's really not as simple as that. As this Redditor says, whoever first said that Chinese grammar is easy should be shot. Okay, well, I don't know about that, but they have a point. There are actually a lot of complexities of Chinese grammar. Here's one example. There are classifiers and count words. So these are grammatical particles that have to go with certain nouns in many contexts. For example, in English, you can say 3 books, but in Mandarin, you can't say that. You have to say an additional word, a required classifier here. And remember how we said that there weren't plurals in Mandarin? Well, that's actually not really true. Classifiers can complicate that. When placed after a noun rather than before it, or when repeated, a classifier can signify a plural or an indefinite quality. Like a lot of other super hard languages, Korean and Japanese also have classifiers. Also, the fact that there are no declensions or conjugations means that you have to more broadly understand how the pieces fit together in a sentence. And just because there aren't verb conjugations doesn't mean there aren't tenses. There are, and you'll have to learn how to use the future and the past and a bunch of other tenses, just like you would in pretty much any other language. So you're not quite off the hook. So is it even possible for a regular, average person to learn Mandarin? Of course it is. There are about 1 billion people who can speak it, and I guarantee not everyone in China is that smart. In fact, there are a few advantages that a Mandarin language learner actually has. First, there's a breadth of resources. People across the world speak Chinese, and they also learn it, so there are thousands of textbooks, apps, websites, and teachers to help students learn Mandarin. I compare that to when I first started learning Bosnian. There were about 2 not very good textbooks available on Amazon, and like 2 native speakers in my hometown. If I had been learning Mandarin, I would not have been so limited. There's also a tremendous amount of Chinese media. Anyone can go on Netflix and turn on a random Chinese drama. You'll learn something and be entertained at the same time, even if the acting at times can be a bit questionable. So, why is Mandarin so hard? Basically, you have to memorize a ton of characters, learn the complicated grammar, figure out a new pronunciation system, and gain an entirely new set of vocabulary. But wait, most of that sounds like any other language? Yeah, pretty much. Mandarin is hard because all of those things are hard, and of course because, the secret, the Chinese writing system is probably the hardest in the world. Do you agree? Is Chinese really that hard? Or is there a harder language out there? I would be very curious to hear what you all think. So write a comment if you have thoughts. Other than that, check out some of my other videos. I have a channel full of language and linguistics videos. Subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I'll see you next time. Bye.